So we're like, all right, let's say if we were all worth $10 billion each, what would we do? We want to go to a nice restaurant. We want them to know who we are. We want to be able to get a table, if there aren't any available tables. We want to go to a nice club. We want to know what the cool spot is. So it's like a hack. So it's like, all right, if we're not going to be billionaires, we'll live the same billionaire lifestyle by doing the same shit we would have done anyway with $10 billion, except we don't have to wait until some point down the road where we made sacrifices and we're 70 years old. We'll just do the shit now. So all of us, I think, share a passion, and we love restaurants. We love entrepreneurs. We love people that take risks, that have balls. We love hanging out together. We love spending time together, being social.
My liver doesn't love you so much.
But we all have a love for spending time together, hanging out with our friends and dining and drinking and hanging out.
Let me ask you a question.
A lawyer, a broker, and a construction guy walks into a bar. Joseph the bulldog, Cosmo the spiritual gangster, and Wayne the gentle giant. So this lot are a unique group of non-loud about town showmen, but super talented and quirky specialists. Joseph's the hospitality lawyer, Cosmo's the hospitality broker, and Wayne is the hospitality builder. I'm calling this show The Inside Job because these hospo veterans have seen some shit. They offer their insight into the past and future of the hospitality industry and really understand the moment we are in, being COVID-19. They also know the evil landlords and the not so evil ones. They know the city of Manhattan better than anyone I've ever met. You may not see them on Celebrity Dancing or Top Chef, but one day you may need them. That's why I'm calling this show The Inside Job.
All right, well, we've got a fantastic show today. We've got Joseph the lawyer, we've got Cosmo the broker, and we've got Wayne the builder, all hospitality veterans. And we're on this show today because I kind of inspired by you three guys. We're in the middle of COVID-19. This will come out probably 3 or 4 weeks from now. Right now, it's kind of apocalyptic sort of shit show industry. You're all very talented. You've all been in this city for many years. So I'm going to kind of put the mic over to Joseph, put the pressure on you first, and ask you, and you can tell me to get fucked if you want, but I'm going to ask you, how many clients have you got? Because you got Helbraun, would you want to tell your company's name?
Sure. We're Helbraun Levey.
Helbraun Levey.
So a full-service law firm for people in the hospitality space.
Right, and you just deal with hospitality people only.
Just hospitality, and we do everything for them.
And you like the odd Negroni.
Yeah, I like the old Negroni. But yeah, we have a corporate department. We have a real estate group. We have a regulatory and licensing group, which I run. Mm-hmm. We do employment and litigation. The idea is it's one-stop shopping for people in the space.
Yep.
And everybody who works for me grew up in the hospitality business.
Are you allowed to talk about any of your client big names that look after you that are public? Like, is Danny Meyer one of your clients? Am I allowed to ask, or you just got to nod?
All the clients.
Or is this one of those things where you go, I just nod?
Yeah. It'll be more nodding.
Yeah. So there'll be no, but you look after some pretty big fish of this city, right? You know the ins and outs, right? So people that have got, one restaurant like me that you've looked after, and then there's people that have got 50, venues or 30 venues. There's some big names. So you've got a very broad, and you've also got some good give back in your group as well. One of the things I liked about joining with you in the whole team is that there's some animal rights things, and there's some give back on, charitable stuff. And how long have you been doing this in the city now?
Firm's been around for about 15 years.
15 years, right? And before you were in the firm, because you always feel like you did something else than law. I don't know. We don't quite know what that is, but I've been out with you. I've been out with you a couple times, and I'm always like, "You sure you're a lawyer?"
Yeah. When I was in law school, I started a company.
Yeah.
And that company was representing fighters in mixed martial arts and boxing.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense,
so
right?
Did that
Watch
for
yourself.
a bit, and then kind of split with my partner in that, and was looking for the next move.
Yep.
And I was out there. It was a super humbling time in my life, sending out cover letters and resumes all day, every day, getting job offers for jobs that I couldn't stomach doing.
Yep.
And any of the jobs I actually wanted to do didn't want me because they didn't value the entrepreneurial experience.
So you tasted rejection.
Yeah.
And that's probably why you love restaurateurs, right? Because we're used to eating those on a regular basis.
Exactly. Like, I always embrace that role of that scrappy, chip on your shoulder guy who's just going to outwork everybody else.
Yeah.
And I dare you to put me up against the wall.
Because in the intro that you don't know, I recorded. It was like I actually called you the pit bull kind of, bulldog. In a really romantic way. Because I remember when we went to go for our license, and we went to, for the listeners, CB2 means Community Board 2, and the first thing somebody said to me, "Oh shit, you're in that zone." I'm like, "What the fuck?" It was like I was in Compton and on that. Yeah. And then I asked you, and you're like, "Oh yeah," and I remember you talking to me about it, and I was like horrified that I even made the decision to do it. But you made it so easy. And I remember we went to a community board meeting together and watched two Australian idiots before me getting their ass handed to them in front of the community board, because they kind of went there very disrespectful and all this kind of stuff. And you'd prepped us incredibly well. And I remember we blitzed through it, right? Yeah. I nearly had a tear in my eye because it was 6 months worth of work. And we had all these kind of older generation or community board members. And fair enough, they don't want idiots in their street and noise and all that kind of stuff. And they were all kind of like anti the site we were on because it's an old club. And I remember you prepping me right. So that was a pivotal moment for me to think, you guys aren't just lawyers. You guys really want this city to succeed, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I was born in Manhattan.
Right.
Like, so this is my city. And, as cheesy as this sounds, the fact that I can walk around the city and see all these different bars and restaurants and clubs and hotels that I've been a part of, even if it's a small part, getting a liquor license and that's it, for me, it feels like I'm involved on a deeper level in the fabric of the city, and that's meaningful to me.
Yeah.
So I know Cosmo before I knew you, and I know you because of Cosmo. So it was like this really great family connection. We'll get to Wayne in a second. So Cosmo, you're a hospitality broker. What does a fucking broker do? Other than get paid shitloads of money just to basically convince me that I'm not stupid and I should get a restaurant in Manhattan because you're starving of restaurants. Yeah. When I came here, you only had 32,000, and I thought, hey, what's 32,001? And I want to open an Italian restaurant. But what does a broker do? Like for some young people, I'm 25 years old, I don't know what you do.
Yeah, so it depends on who's being serviced, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're servicing the landlord, you're servicing the tenant.
Yep.
Landlord and tenants have completely opposing perspectives, right? So a landlord has the math on his property, his investment, and a tenant, let's say a restaurant, has the math on their business.
Right.
So I try to merge the two perspectives to find an agreeable place where there's long-term sustainability, ultimately.
So you're basically making us marry. Yeah. I mean, I know what it means, but if somebody doesn't and they've never had their own restaurant, and if you want one, don't do it. But if you haven't had your own restaurant, you get a broker, you're kind of like the ref.
Yeah.
Right? Because
pretty much.
It's never that simple, and it's always every landlord loves you because you're going to sign a lease, and then you start getting into the weeds, and then the restaurateur wants something, the landlord wants something else, and before you know it, you've lost a liver, a limb, and an arm, and you've realised you signed something away, and you kind of, I noticed with you sit in the middle. You don't really. You're not even. You might get paid for one or the other, but you're very transparent about both objectives, right? So that's kind of interesting. Then I met Wayne, who's our builder, who built our restaurant, and you guys know each other, so there's a connection through there. But you two guys have never really crossed paths because
we don't really have a reason to cross paths.
Yeah.
By the time it gets to me, he's done all his work. He's ready to go.
And you've built some monsters we're going to get to in a minute. But how long have you been in the city now?
This should be about 30-something years now.
And you're basically you specialize in hospitality. So if I came and said, I want to build a boat, you're like, I'm the wrong guy.
Years ago, I was building only office interiors.
Right.
Substantial square footage of office interiors. It was boring.
You think?
Yeah. You walk by a building and say, oh, I did the 38th floor and the 39th. No one sees it.
Right.
So my first real restaurant was for Restaurant Danielle, the original Restaurant Danielle.
Wow. That's an institution.
Yeah, the Surrey Hotel.
I've heard of it.
Was the original.
Yeah.
In the Surrey Hotel. And we did it again Cafe Baloo. But when I used to walk by, I could actually show people what we did. And there was a certain sense of self-pride in saying we did that.
Right.
Rather than saying we did the 37th floor of,
Yeah, because
and
even though
it saves marketing dollars too.
Right.
I did that right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paper. There was no internet back then.
And you guys are kind of really connected in a way that even Mark and you, like even for somebody like you that's built all these restaurants, and even like Joseph and you have never met, but actually all three of you need to be part of the puzzle to keep going. So I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I'm like, we're going to start, right, like for restaurateurs, particularly myself, and a whole bunch of restaurateurs out there. We'll deal with, Greater New York, but let's talk Manhattan right now. Manhattan's kind of been separate to Greater New York because only a month ago I went over to the Catskills and I went to Jersey and I dined inside, and I came home and we're still sitting outside in the fucking rain.
Yeah.
While we're recording this, dining is supposed to come back in indoor dining. Particularly you don't necessarily have to deal with landlords until construction. So if we started at the, this stage right now, you would normally be doing deals. You would normally be signing people up, but your company's now fighting landlords for the tenants, right? And I know you guys punch out these fucking great emails that kind of feel like, it's probably why I think you guys are Bulldog, and they end up in Eater all the time, and you call them the landies, short for landlords. And, there's the evil landlords and the not so evil landlords, right? And so I kind of sit there and I think, well, I'm a landlord. It doesn't make me evil. It doesn't mean I don't have a mortgage. Like right now between you two, what's faring in this city in regards to landlords? Where are they? Are they realistic about the apocalypse that's coming or that's here?
Yeah.
Are they negotiating down, or is it a mixed bag of some get it, some don't, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would if I take the lead here, I don't think that you can classify landlords as a category of anyone that owns a building is the same mentality landlord.
Right.
There's so many different factors. Let's say to simplify everything, it comes down for the most part to math, right? So it's like you have taxes, you have debt. You have your acquisition costs for the property. So like there's math that goes into how much you valued your retail space, how much you have to get for that space. Right now, if the lenders are willing to work with you and dealing with tenants that aren't paying, and there's a whole gamut of let's say data points that lend themselves toward also if your portfolio,
sure.
And there's a lot of stresses, right? So what you try to do is, let's say, the difference between an evil landlord and a nice landlord, right? I wouldn't necessarily say there's evil landlords, right? There's an insensitivity that will exist,
sure.
Period, right? It's not a personal thing, but there's an insensitivity toward other people's businesses,
sure.
Right? So a landlord is a specific business.
It's bricks and mortar. They got
right?
a mortgage. They just want to fill it.
So that perspective lends itself to a certain type of interpretation of the data points, right? And then you have, who's able to be more flexible,
right.
Based on what their math looks like, right? So you say, okay, this guy is able to provide more support to the tenant because of their situation. Maybe they own the building outright or whatever
sure.
it is. And there's other landlords where they're under a lot of stress. They have a tremendous amount of units,
yep.
And they might look at case by case specific instances as, all right, if I'm willing to be so flexible here, is that going to compromise an anchor I might need in dealing with the rest of my portfolio, right? So like if
sure.
I give here, then I might have to give with fucking 50 other people. I can't handle.
It's kind of like an onion for these guys, right? Once they're unlaid, they might have 10 or 20 properties, leverage themselves really high. Their market value has gone down the toilet right now, and all of a sudden they cut a new deal, and their bank turns around and goes, your valuation of your property sucks. That's really what you're saying, right?
Yeah. So like let's say for instance, so the landlord's like, all right, well, I can't be sensitive to this guy, because if I'm sensitive to him, I'm going to have to be sensitive to these 58 other guys or whatever
right.
it is. And then you're like, all right, well, I'm going to approach this in a robotic, mechanical way,
sure.
and let that be the bearer of my stress, and I'll react maybe, let's say, subjectively after that first, intermediary that's like catching everything. So like the system, let's say the black box or whatever catches it, spits out. Now at least I can create some sort of connection after that point, right? And what happens is what the current circumstances are so specific also to the operator's finances,
sure.
And it's so specific to let's say the physical configuration of the space, right? Or like the location, like, some tenants might not have the ability to take advantage of the outdoor dining, like, for you, or, or some people, like, let's say a restaurant, 12 chairs, has 100 chairs now, right? It's like they're probably doing, 4 times the
112 chairs.
Yeah, so they might be doing, 4 times the revenue that they would normally do.
So, okay, so let's say...
The landlords also come from a perspective where they're negotiating for 10 to 15 years out.
Right.
Everyone else is looking at it as they're negotiating for today.
Sure.
But what they're negotiating today will affect them over the course of 10 years, 15 years.
Right.
Each of them may go generational.
And you two are like I'll put you in the landlord moment for the protecting them, for example. A lot of them have been around for a lot of shit that's gone down in the city, and they've seen some stuff, Like I saw a sign at Paris Cafe on the door, and it was like, we did 9/11, we did Hurricane Sandy, we did GFC, enough is enough, we're done, see you later, right? So from your perspective now, you're representing pretty much tenants, right? You don't really represent landlords, do you?
Not in that kind of thing.
Not in that kind of thing. So, like right now, what's your number one battle? I mean, your advisory side, I know we ask for advice pretty much weekly. I mean, your advisory side right now must be huge because it's changing by the day.
Yeah.
We're kind of making this shit up as we go along. To be fair to everyone, everybody kind of is, because this isn't, it'll be over in a year. We don't even know what this thing looks like in 5, right? But in saying that, there's a big question in here. In saying that, every single crisis has been its own uniqueness. So 9/11, we're never going to fly again. We want to go to war. That changes everything globally, security, blah, blah, blah. Hurricane Sandy, how long is this city going to be destroyed? GFC, I think at that point when the global financial crisis started, we were all going to be broke. The city was going to look like I Am Legend with palm trees coming out of the windows. And now here we are, COVID, and we're going to wear masks for a long time. We can't connect. So what's your number one? What are the majority? Because we can't talk about every individual case, but what's the majority of tenants talking to you about right now, other than rent relief?
Yeah. So the fucked up thing about this current crisis is you don't know what's going to happen. Right?
Yep.
Like Hurricane Sandy, you're like, okay, that sucks. There's damage. There's water. But guess what? That shit's going to go away, and we'll rebuild, and it'll be fine. 9/11, nightmare. But you know what? Everyone came together. Let's get through it. Let's start the cleanup. Let's start rebuilding. We don't know when the fuck that cleanup and rebuilding is going to happen here, because we might get another wave. Everything might shut down again. I mean, this has affected people in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's affected people with such magnitude that who the fuck even knows if there's going to be a traditional restaurant in the short term. Now, at the end of the day, even if every restaurant that's open right now in New York City goes out of business. Right? Everyone. Fucking gone. All of them.
Yep.
Well, guess what? Once this shit passes and there's a vaccine and people start living their lives again, someone's going to be like, oh shit, I bet you a steakhouse in Midtown would do really well.
Yep.
Oh shit, I think we need a dive bar on the Lower East Side.
Yep.
Oh shit, we need this. And all this shit's going to happen again. So it is cyclical in that sense.
Yep.
But the big but part of this is, but when? We don't know when. It's not going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 6 months.
And
maybe
that's
it's
crystal
a year.
bullshit, right? So like I said
Crystal
this the other
bullshit.
day I interviewed David Rabin, he's a club guru from, the 80s, and you all know his work, and he's got tons of places. And I actually just remember, because I've realised how old I was, I referenced an old movie, and I remember Demolition Man, right? Sylvester Stallone, Demolition Man, and Sandra Bullock's, he wakes up from his fucking 50-year coma. They're in, I think they're actually in 2050 or 2020. They're sitting in the car, and he's like, I want to get something to eat. And she's like, well, there's Taco Bell. And he goes, not really. What else? And she goes, well, that's it. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, everything's the Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And he's like, no shit, right? And
That's
so
not terrible.
that's what's scary. That is,
Taco
don't even say that
Supreme.
around me. But the point I'm making is that what's really interesting about this was maybe the GFC made sense that would be happen, but now private equity, I know people that are about to scale to 8, 9 places from 4 or 5, and even from small 1. And I'm not talking about rich dudes. I'm talking about someone with a sandwich shop that's bust their ass for 5 years. Private equity have just gone, no way.
Yeah.
Right? There ain't going to be that. And even the big groups that are only funded and run by private equity are not funding. So the question I have to you, because we're going to go positive in a second because there's some upside here. What happens now with private equity mobs? Are they just going to sit and watch and let these places fall over and then reboot?
Well, like with any group that watches a market, right? They're waiting to see when that moment comes that things are going to bottom out,
right?
And things are going to be ripe to buy again, right? So you mentioned the global financial crisis, right? 2008, 2009 was one of the biggest growth years my firm has ever had.
Wow.
Why? Because all the shitty operators were pushed out.
Yep.
Because they had to tighten their belts, and only the good ones knew how to.
Yep.
But all the good operators who were able to tighten their belts and get through that nightmare.
Yep.
That's when all these restaurant groups were born.
But that changed now. That's like, we've now lost some big names.
Right. Well, this is different.
Yeah.
This isn't just
Yeah,
like
it's completely different.
This isn't just like people are getting squeezed, in their bank account. This is like people can't fucking go to a restaurant. What do we do?
But I mean, look at icons like Keith McNally, right? He has to be. He's changed districts.
Yeah.
He's changed the way you eat, the way you behave. And I mean, this guy didn't open 20-seat restaurants, and he didn't have $1 billion in the bank like some of the bigger chains. But you look at Augustine, and I sit there and I think Augustine is a restaurant
failing
for
business from the beginning.
Right, maybe, but like let's look at pioneering people. Yeah,
It's
nice.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Augustine.
Let's take it like look at it like this. It's just math, period.
Sure.
Right? So you're going to be able to do an X amount of revenue. You're going to from that revenue you pay X amount of occupancy costs.
Yep.
Period. So right now, like we're saying, it's not just perspective, because you have let's say, which normally city averages maybe 1 to 1.5% vacancy rate for residential.
Right.
Now you're at like 17%.
Right.
Right. So you have offices that there's no workers.
Sure.
Right. You have a new model that might be implemented where a lot of people are going to work from home.
Sure.
A lot of people, the landscape of the city, the people moving back may not be the people who left.
Yep.
Right. The schools there's no schools that are open, so you have kids that are home. So people with families, they got to deal with the fucking kids. A lot of people don't necessarily live in the city to begin with, so they're not coming into the city. So I think the city's like the amount of people in Manhattan between like certain hours is like tenfold what live here, right? So they're not coming in. The people that lived here are leaving, and then so like how would private equity make a calculation that's that sophisticated or complicated when they were already doing a pretty bad job as it was?
Well, I'll argue that point, because here's the thing, right? If you look at what we do in hospitality, it's basically like a film set, right? It's sensory experience. We're all fucking actors, and we're all selling you a moment in time. If you look at something, and we'll argue over Augustine, because I have a lot of respect for Keith McNally, and we all do. Augustine in the Beekman Hotel, okay, maybe it didn't make money, but it employed 120 people, and he took the risk, not them. He took the risk of putting his name to that thing and going under. The point I'm making is it is easy and it is maths, but I'll argue, there are some of those independent movies, and they cost $60 million to make, and they turn over $40 million bucks. And it might be somebody like really well known, like Joaquin Phoenix, right? He's made some great movies that don't make money.
Yeah.
But they've reshaped the industry to not always end up with a fucking happy ending. So like I'm looking at like a restaurant, right? Most movies for the last 20 years, they kind of always need a happy ending. Otherwise, the mass audience
I think
don't
all
love it.
Joaquin Phoenix's movies are profitable.
Yeah, right. Well, they're not. And so this is the interesting thing is he made a movie, had a bad ending. For the public, it was the one with the robotic girl, and people were like, I wanted it to end with flowers and everybody's happy and I run off into the sunset. The point I'm making back to the restaurant is sometimes people are pioneers. They're not trying to be. They are, but they shape the rest of us.
Yeah.
Right? Keith McNally's the reason I basically sold everything to come to this city and basically have a go. And I was like, he's long term. How long ago did he go down to Balthazar, down now which is now trendy Soho? 18, 19 years, right? So what was you've been here a long time. So what was Soho like 20 years ago?
I think a big part of the equation as well now is the online dining experience.
Sure.
So many people order in now.
Yeah.
And it's taking away from those people would normally be going out to eat. So that's a big part of the equation between the caviars and Uber Eats and this.
But if you look at Broadway in Soho, what was that like 20 years ago? Were you going to walk down there for...
It was filled with independent stores, independent restaurants.
Yep.
There was very few chains down there, no international clothing stores.
Right.
None of that was down there back then. It was great.
Okay.
Because you could walk into a store that was individual to that location. You couldn't find it anywhere else.
But there was no one. There were no restaurants. There were no 350 seat. Like if you look at Balthazar, there are no 350 seat restaurants down that area.
Yeah.
That's a big gamble, right? Like when it works, you're a fucking genius. When it doesn't work, you're not. Right? It's like remember,
I wouldn't say a big gamble. I just think it's just at the time maybe a lot of money. Right, so it's a big cost, right? So the unit cost, and you have to be able to absorb that. If you're a small operator, it's like where do you get $5 million? Years ago when you could build a restaurant for $500,000.
Right, but then if you look at somebody like, let's say Kevin Costner, and if you're young and you're listening to this, remember there was Dances with Wolves for us old pricks, and remember it won a bunch of Academy Awards, Australian cinematographer, blah blah blah, made a fortune. Then somebody gave Kevin Costner $120 million, and he made Waterworld, and it fucking bombed.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't say, because anybody that's successful has had bad movies, right? Mm-hmm. So if we were to look at it now, and I'm thinking about the building trade, I can't get you on the phone half the time because you're busy. What are you fucking doing during this time?
We're always busy.
He's on the phone with me.
Who's building? I mean, other than
people that are financially secure,
right,
are actually taking advantage of the opportunity to have all the resources that are on hold for projects that are on hold and
Right.
things that are on hold, and they're taking advantage of the opportunity, being that they're well financed, to utilize those finances to push their projects.
So you're built so that what you're
very
saying.
busy.
So they're busy building because they believe there's a future.
Absolutely. Well, there always is a future. But
Right.
like Justin, what is that future? That's
Right, but then if
so
you're
they're already speculating.
right, and so you're building big projects or small
Yeah,
projects,
big projects.
like hotels, restaurants,
Hotels, restaurants, very large stuff.
and so but not always billionaires, right? Like these are independent operators,
Oh, they're all independent.
and it's like leveraging themselves and all that kind of stuff.
Themselves, yeah. They have trust in Manhattan. They've been here before.
They've seen all
been
this.
through this before.
Got it.
And like Joe said, they're the unknown here is when is it going to end?
Well, because you built some monster places, right? So, like, what are some of the places that are behind you from
It's a lot of stuff.
Moxy
A lot
Hotel,
of things, yeah.
Tao, that kind of stuff? Like, these aren't tiny little 10-seat restaurants, right? So that means, regardless of what people think about the big boys that are behind it, that's believing in a city. When you put 500 people in a venue and you get you to build it, and so those people are still around investing.
Absolutely. We believe in it too.
Well, no, not necessarily. Not
Landlords
necessarily.
sometimes are picking up those costs.
Yeah,
Right.
and also I was going to say, like, let's say specifically with the Augustine, I'm not familiar with the actual deal terms.
Yeah.
But if I had to guess, I would say that it was probably some sort of management contract. I couldn't imagine an operator going into that location, spending that much money with
Yeah.
their own money, having to pay back that capex, and even be willing to do that, right? So I would imagine that the hotel would front it because they have the most to
We
gain.
are talking about restaurateurs, right? We are a bit fucking retarded I shouldn't say that, but we are a bit mental when it comes to investing. We don't always think like that. Sometimes we think we're going to put it all on black.
Yes and no.
But it makes perfect sense.
You know, I don't think you put millions of dollars, because just think your payback on, let's say, each $1 million, right? Where's the money come from? What kind of return is that $1 million going to get? And you have to pay that back before you start really making money outside of, whatever the management fee is, right? So a lot of times the deal, it's clear that it doesn't work, right? Like, I think almost now that we've been in the business as long as we have, it's pretty clear what's going to work, what's not. When you see something that doesn't work, you learn from it. And if and for the most part, you can predict whether or not it makes sense or not. So, like, let's say right now, what is Corona or COVID has shown us, right? So neighborhoods,
Vulnerability.
yeah. Well, neighborhoods are the most predictable, right? Like Upper East Side, Upper West Side, West Village, have all been doing business, right? Midtown. So
But it doesn't help that the trains shut down at a certain time, so people are actually staying in their neighborhoods.
They're staying in the neighborhood.
You're not in Queens going and you go to Midtown for dinner because you can't get home.
We were just in Williamsburg. Fucking every single restaurant's mobbed.
Wayne doesn't know. He doesn't know there's trains under the ground.
He's
found
never
out.
taken a train.
There's an MTA here, Wayne. You should try it sometime.
Seriously, what time did the train shut down?
Like 10 or 11 o'clock.
Yeah, that's they did the curfew on the restaurants to allow the food service workers to be able to get home. That's
What
why
are they shutting down now?
11 o'clock or
Not
something
late.
like that.
Yeah. Which means, 11 o'clock for some people go, oh, how late? But you look at a place like Amsterdam Avenue, that doesn't start firing up till it's 11 and there's a ton of people down there, right? So hang on. So you're building shit. Are you cutting deals?
Yeah.
And are you basically signing leases?
Some.
Not as many, of course, before.
No.
But don't you three find that remarkable?
Remarkable in what way?
People are still doing it.
From my perspective,
No, it makes sense.
Because after
Right.
It makes sense.
So here's the thing. Look, I think similar to what we saw in 2008, the bad operators can't weather this storm.
No.
Yep.
They won't. They're gone.
Yep.
The good ones can and will.
What's a good one? Cashed up, or somebody that just knows how to negotiate?
A combination of both.
Yeah.
And it could be equal pieces of both. It could be really cashed up, average operator, great operator, medium cash. It could be a combination.
Yeah.
But the people who just know how to get it done and weather the storm. There will be people that can do that. And then there's going to be a big cross section.
Yep.
And I think the good operators in the cross section that either have a shitty landlord or an unsympathetic landlord,
Yep.
or don't have the cash or whatever it is, when they go out, if they go out, it's not going to be for good. They're just going to fucking regroup.
Yep.
And they're going to find a better deal in 6 months when we're closer to coming out of this thing.
Sure.
And they're going to have the same or a similar concept in a better space, paying better rent, maybe with new investors, maybe the same investors, but they will reinvent themselves.
And sharpen their tools, right? So get their
100%.
EBITDA, their bottom lines
Yeah,
right.
the renovation clause. They're not going to. Any operators now that get hurt by the COVID, in the shutdown, when they go to reopen, they're not going to spend the kind of money they spent to open their original place.
For
They
now.
understood, yeah, for now.
For
They
now.
understood now that the investment dollars in construction is probably the largest investment made in the whole.
Because you know people have very short memories,
Absolutely.
right? Because
Well, look, you know this better than most people,
Yeah.
right? Hospitality people.
Yeah.
I have a Michelin star chef who's gone out of business. Is he gonna put in a job application to become an insurance salesman?
no,
No.
he's going to go find an investor for another gig.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah,
But he learned not to spend that $7 million on that build out.
Right.
He's going to try and do it for $2 million.
Well, that's the beautiful thing here, right? So you have those unsympathetic landlords
Yep.
who are not going to move and not going to negotiate, and they're going to wind up holding the bag and they're going to get fucked.
Correct.
And then at some point, they're going to have to give someone a sweetheart deal
Someone's gonna get it.
just to start that rent roll again. And you're going to have some of these guys who had bad luck at their last location that are going to get a gift, and they're going to get a fully built out, beautiful restaurant that they don't have to, pay you millions of dollars for because someone already did.
Someone did it.
And it's there, and it's just sitting there ready to go.
I'm going to ask a loaded question, and I have zero interest in your red, blue, and white. Boom. We're not going to ask any Republican, Democrat, Independent. I could care less about that stuff. But what I am interested in is, I'll start with you, Joseph, because you're probably the most
You
diplomatic.
should ask Wayne first.
I was going to ask Wayne last, actually. I was going to say, political views aside, do you think the mayor and the governor are doing a good job? They're not wrapped in the same bucket, so they're both different people currently. And if you don't, what would you have done
Trying
differently?
to get him shot over
What would you have done differently? Because I've heard a lot of criticism, and it's very easy to criticise. Armchair directing is a great thing. I'm involved in a design hotel in Australia, and we feed 15, 20,000 people a week in all three places. Somebody's always unhappy there wasn't enough lemon on the salad. So in a city of this sort of size and capacity, do you think the mayor's done a good job of maybe not of communicating, but has done a good job?
Short answer, no.
Right.
Long answer, no.
Yeah. What would he have done differently?
He's been terrible.
Yeah. And why?
Well, so the big thing for me is let's talk about the governor first, actually. Because the governor is sort of notorious for being a control freak.
Right.
Right? And most of the time, being that megalomaniac and being a dick, nobody likes that.
Right.
But I'll tell you, at the beginning of the shutdown, the fact that he was such a control freak and really had this state on lockdown and micromanaged it the way that he had got us out of a really bad situation. So I give him full credit for getting New York to a good place fast and for making New York the example that the rest of the country should have paid attention to, but didn't, unfortunately. So kudos to him for that.
Right.
Once we got clear of that, though, he didn't want to let go of that power, of that ability to micromanage things, and kept us suffocated for a little too long.
Right.
And now he's in this crazy space where he's
got a book
deputizing.
coming out.
Yeah, he's got a book tour coming, so the last thing he wants is a spike, and he's willing to sacrifice the businesses across this country, specifically New York City, to make sure that there's no spike and his book tour goes off without a hitch,
Right.
and that he's kind of looked at as this hero when I think he kind of held the reins a little too tight for a little too long. He should have done.
You think he called it too late?
Yeah, he should have started this a lot sooner. The reopening and see what happens.
All right.
If it spikes, cool, shut it down. But don't keep everyone so suffocated in New York City the way that he has. So I think that he had some good moments.
Yep.
And then he had some shitty ones where he didn't want to let go of the power because he.
All right, I'm going to go real controversial before I go to Cosmo. Tell me about Blasio. What? Give me the short version.
Everything he's done, I would have done the opposite.
Disaster.
It's just a disaster.
Like what?
He's just not a leader. Right?
Like what?
Exactly.
So that's the problem. The problem is New York City needed a fucking leader
Yep.
throughout this shit, and we didn't get it from him. He was hiding under his bed or in his bathtub, whatever the fuck he was doing, and any decision he made was a little too late, and it seemed like he was nervous to make a decision because he didn't want, the papers to get on him or reporters to get on him or people to. He was too nervous about what other people thought, and he just showed that he's not a fucking leader, and that's what we
So
needed.
one thing you would have done differently if you were mayor?
I wouldn't have shut the city down the way he shut the city down. I think the governor, like Joseph said, after the governor had controlled that, it was time to test the waters and see how the city would react by opening.
So you're both saying
And no one ever opened.
So you're both saying
It's
that
still
both
open.
those two called it too late.
Well,
Too late.
Let's call it what it is. The mayor was doing nothing.
Right.
The governor's
Right.
calling the shots.
Is that what you believe?
The governor always calls the shots, and
Yeah.
I was actually more disappointed in the governor because he has the veto authority over the mayor.
Yeah.
But he allowed the mayor just to make whatever decisions he wanted to make.
Think that was deliberate?
At least in the media, you never saw the governor and the mayor, going head to head. They always seem to be aligned on either one's decisions. But for me, the decisions that the mayor was making, a lot of them should have been overruled.
So you kind of, in a way, you two, before we go to our spiritual gangster and he gives me an insight with an ayahuasca backing, you two guys kind of basically saying the shutdown worked, but you called it too late.
Correct.
Right.
And I can't even comment on that.
You have to comment on this.
can't.
You have to comment on this. Tell me a short version of what you would have done differently, and you can't talk about the fact that you don't think you're going to die or get sick. What would you just tell me one thing you would have done differently?
I'm on a completely another planet when it comes to any of this shit.
So you don't think we should have been shut down at all?
I don't even think it exists.
Okay, well that's a different conversation completely. This could be another show, Mark. The producers in the background just like, what the fuck? So well, speaking of ridiculous things, tell me, Wayne, the most ridiculous thing you've seen happen in the last 6 months in this city.
A mutual friend has a restaurant with probably the largest seating capacity of any restaurant that I've built.
Wow.
And push forwards. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Push forwards through COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Well, throughout the whole lockdown,
Yeah.
he got special permission to continue build. He had the special permits. And he just pushed forwards, understanding that at some point the world will open up again and things will change. And he had to I gave him so much credit for having the balls to push through. I mean, it's a massive. It's like 600.
So you're saying you're fucking proud of him?
Very proud of him. Yeah,
he's a beast.
Why can't we make something name?
He's a beast.
I thought you were going to say he's got like one left testicle or something. I mean, tell us what. Okay, we're not allowed to know his name. We can guess. Okay.
No, he's a beast.
Tell us the district he's in, and then we'll figure it out later.
Midtown.
Midtown. Oh, well, that's fucking not very helpful. Jesus Christ! Like that's the first 10,000 restaurants.
When I saw him, and I was like, "You want to keep going?" He's like,
So you found a believer. You found a true believer.
As a matter of fact, he wanted to keep going so strongly.
Yeah.
Usually our billing requisitions are monthly.
Yeah.
He says, "No, bill me every week.
Yeah.
I'll pay you every Monday." Every Monday.
Wow, that's balls.
I swear to God, every Monday he wired.
Yeah.
You got anything like that, Cos? Anybody in the hospitality industry just signed off a deal and said, "Fuck it, we're going forward"?
Yeah, signed a bunch of leases.
Yeah.
The whole thing is kind of like no one knows what to trust, right? So you're like, all right, I'm being bombarded with an illusion of an expert. Mm-hmm. Right? Who the fuck is an expert, right? So everyone has all these different, backgrounds and opinions and belief systems. Mm-hmm. It's all fundamentally founded clearly in the same, in my opinion, garbage, right? Because you see people walking around with fucking masks on, right? So, all right, so Halloween, is in a couple weeks. Why are you wearing a mask? Mm-hmm. So that question, resonates from an interpretation, and it hits a lot of different things for each person, right? Yeah. Like, maybe, I have, my kids and my I have an in-law that lives with me, or, blah, blah, blah. Who the fuck knows?
Perspective, right?
But
what inspiration have you seen in this? Because we're talking about cutting deals, people that are believing in an industry, right? Like, I'm 25 years old now. I wish.
It's like this. Okay. If you think that you can get sick, let's say simply from someone else.
Yeah.
Stay the fuck home.
Yeah.
Very simple. Wait, they're testing everybody, right?
Sure.
Taking your information, taking this. Okay, if you're sick with an ailment or whatever it is that's so deadly, right, that the entire world shut down, right? That should mean that that whatever's making you sick is strong enough that when you're sick, you wouldn't even be able to make it outside.
Sure.
Right? Like if this thing's going to fucking kill me, I can't even go out if I wanted to because I'm so sick from this thing that's about to fucking kill me.
What's your inspiration? Tell me. You're talking about, because he's talking about guys signing deals. Tell me about fucking people. I want to know about people that are signing deals right now that are prepared to invest in this city.
Yeah.
Because in the end, everybody hates capitalism. I'm not saying I'm for one or the other, but also they're the people putting their money where their mouth is, right? What kind of people are signing deals, and what are they signing?
People that what Corona or COVID has created, right? Is
gonna go back to this, aren't you?
Well, I'm gonna tie it together.
Joseph, nudge him to give me a fucking answer for Christ's sake.
No, but I'm gonna tie it together, right?
Gansevoort Hotel. I've been renovating the Gansevoort Hotel since day one.
Yep.
Pre-COVID, we started. We went right through.
Yep.
We're still renovating. They didn't stop, and this is a family. This is not a corporate.
And hotels in the moment are fucking killing fields, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
They did not stop, and I had a lot of respect for them. They were one of the originators of the meatpacking to begin with.
Sure.
Back in 2004, 2003. And they're going to, again...
And they were innovators of modern hotels. And
of the hotels. I mean, we had to, adjust our game plan and slow certain things down.
But they're not billionaire family. They're an independent family. They've got properties. They all work in the... They've got the brother, the cousin.
Cousins. Everyone's in the family.
Yeah.
And they elected as a family to proceed with it, knowing that they had zero revenue coming in from this property.
And if any of us were private equity and we were funding hotels right now, we'd freeze.
Exactly.
We'd freeze, right? Nobody, because how many rooms are going to be empty in this city?
They have one guest coming Thursday night.
Yeah, so for example, that's an example.
It's
so
you.
We represent two massive hotels in Midtown that both shut down completely.
Yeah, I think the Addition shut down in Midtown. One of them. So
I don't even think they were allowed to operate.
Since Cosmo's still thinking about his answer, who are people that are inspiring right now that are just pushing forward, other than hustlers and all that kind of stuff?
Well, look, you asked Wayne a different question. You asked Wayne for the craziest shit he's seen in COVID. So,
you're trying to confuse us, bro.
I'll tell you that.
I
instead.
am, Jesus.
So look, it obviously takes a big set to want to open something right now.
Yeah.
But people are doing it.
Yeah.
And I applaud the people that are doing it, and we're fully supportive. I mean, look, you get our newsletter, you see the thing we push out all the time. We're there, we're supporting people. We're, when you represent only people in the hospitality industry, and the hospitality industry bent over, you take it too. Right?
Sure. I mean, you guys get fired up. Sometimes I have to double take and read it again when you send that letter out. And I'm like, is this my drunk uncle at the wedding? Because you're calling people names, and it's like, and all the partners are on there, and I'm like, I don't even know if this is a legal firm anymore.
Yeah. So we get fired up about it, and I got really fired up a couple months ago because one of my clients who started negotiating a lease pre-COVID, and then kind of put things on hold for a month, and then said, fuck it, let's just go forward. He's got other places. All really well done, nice places, spares no expense, great concept, closes early. And we had a community board meeting a couple months ago. And it was via Zoom, which puts, I think, the applicants at a tremendous disadvantage.
So for the listeners, a community board meeting is, if you don't have a restaurant, you have to basically meet with the community board in some cases to get their approval before you go to the state to get your license and make sure that you're abiding by the local rules of the community and they're happy that you're going to do X, Y, Z. And it's under a microscope, because I've done it with you before. It's not like just, hey, we're doing this. It's like they want to see your floor plans, your menus, your wine list, everything.
Yeah, and while the community board can tell you no and you can still get a license from the state, it'll take, significantly longer, and it's a little bit of a toss-up. So to have that peace of mind to know you're going to get the license, you really need to.
You don't want angry neighbors either, because you want them to be clients.
Exactly, they could be your best customers.
So what's the craziest shit that's happened?
So I was before a community board. I won't say which one.
Yep.
And it was a coffee shop concept, closing early, guy with a proven track record, multiple locations, and the community board's raking this guy over the coals.
For coffee?
Yeah.
What
On
for?
Zoom.
On Zoom.
That's why they do it on Zoom.
We got 30 people looking at me, and they never get that many people at a real live meeting.
No.
And they're just screaming and yelling, "What's wrong with you? Did you even do a business plan? No one works in that building anymore. Why would you want to open this place? Why do you need really being disrespectful, raking this guy?" And finally I had to jump in and be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you people? You should be ashamed of yourself."
Absolutely. So they're sitting there criticizing an entrepreneur that's prepared to put money where his mouth is during probably the world's worst pandemic in the modern history.
The position should be, thank
How
you
can we
so
help you?
much
Yeah.
for investing in
What can
our
we do for you?
community.
Yeah.
What can we do for you? And you know what? If someone wanted to put a nightclub next to an elementary school or a strip club,
But
next
coffee?
to an elementary
Like,
school,
yeah.
give me a fucking break.
Yeah.
But this was a reasonable daytime experience, closing early, and the flack this guy was getting
Did he get it?
from the community board, no, but we've pushed ahead with the liquor authority, and
So when we go to post this live, let's put that fucking name of that guy's coffee shop on the website, so we make sure everybody goes there and has coffee, and then we just give us the community board's address. We'll throw eggs at their windows or something. Like, that's pretty fucked though, right?
it's
It's hard
crazy.
enough.
Well, that's kind of how they always are, but just now more exaggerated.
Because when you're in April and May, right, or like March, April, May, and you're like, fuck, what is going on? The industry is just sort of bottoming out. Everyone's paralyzed.
Yep.
And then one guy calls me one day and goes, "We want to move forward. Fuck it. We're gonna get through this."
Yeah.
I was like, "Fuck it. We're in.
Same with me.
We're totally in. We'll be there. I'll do it myself. I'm not even gonna send somebody else to do it. Like, you'll get me. I'm not charging you for it. Like, let's go."
This is why I call you the bulldog lawyer. So if because I in my intro I talk about you may not see these guys on Dancing with the Stars or Top Chef, but you're going to need one of you three eventually. So what
Should we get super controversial and talk about ADA?
No. Definitely not doing that with you, because otherwise we'll need another fucking show called Overtime times 10. So if I was going to say, what are you going to tell your 20-year self, and not anything about
My
COVID,
what?
your 20-year-old self, what are you going to tell your
My
20-year-old
20-year-old
self,
self?
apart from, like maybe study something different? It's just been
Oh,
a
like
really...
if I was 20?
If you were 20 now,
I'd
with
probably
what
be
you know...
working with my dad again and fucking making no money.
What would you do now if with what you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying bet on the stock market and all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
With what would you know now, industry-wise? What would you tell your 20-year-old self? Would you do anything different?
I would have called the 20-year-old you and went to Bali.
I used to live in Bali. That's why you give me shit. What would you tell him?
If I had a son that was 20 right now,
No,
what would I
you.
tell him? Stay home with mom and let dad deal with this shit.
You're Back to the Future. You're
Right,
talking to
pretty
you-
much
you're
don't
talking to
go
yourself.
out. These people are fucking weirdos.
He's never going to give me a straight answer to that, is he? What would
Say
you tell
that.
your 20-year-old self, Joseph?
I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, it's a
You
weird
happy where
question.
you are?
I'm happy where I am. Yeah.
That's your answer.
Yeah.
We're
'Cause
all
I
happy.
had Mike from Sparks on the other day, who said he's always really, really happy. And then he said at the end, I asked him, and he's in his late, 50s, I hope. And, he's a veteran of this city. He's seen a lot, right? He's like, and I said to him, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And he said, not to go in hospitality.
Yeah.
And I said, but and stay in finance, but he only did a few years in some big investment house and he hated it. And I was like, well, hang on, you can't have both. You just told me you're always happy. How do you know? And he goes, I would have had more money. And I said, well, that doesn't mean happiness.
No.
Richness doesn't come with, it's all different, right? So it's kind of fascinating. So you were really happy with the decisions you made, right?
Yeah, ultimately, because look, I mean, I knew from a super young age that I was gonna work for myself one day. I was just an entrepreneur. I just
Right.
had that in me. My dad owned a hardware store in Midtown. I grew up in that store, and that was his own business. And
Sure.
I got kind of first-hand look at what that looks like. So I kind of knew that was in my DNA.
Yep.
And I knew I was never going to take a conventional path anywhere.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's pretty fucking awesome, though? You can say that.
Yeah, I do.
What about you, Wayne?
Same.
And there's no other way, I
never,
think.
never took a conventional path. Never
So you would
followed-
never tell your 20-year-old self anything different than what you did?
I would tell them just to, follow the path that makes you happy. That's it. Whatever that path is.
But isn't that interesting? Because everybody that's in this industry that I've spoken to says the same thing. Because I can probably list, and I think we can all list, a handful of people we know that aren't in the hospitality industry, rich as shit, and they're miserable as fuck, right? And because richness doesn't necessarily mean money, and none of us,
Helps.
even at times, some of us probably could have stopped working and didn't, risked it all again and again and again. We're all risk takers, and that's kind of uniqueness. Because if we're talking, the audience now is they're people like 25, 28 years old. They've lost their job. They've been furloughed. They're like, do I go and hustle and do what do I do now with my skill set? I'm a waiter. Right? And there's no restaurants to look after, and if there are only 15% of the staff working again. And the answer I said the other day was because somebody was like, "Oh, you got to come out to the beach," and I'm like, "No, I'm working." And I'm like, "You got to study another craft. You got to hustle, man, because when this shit turns, you want to be able to play the banjo and the guitar and run the band." So you still don't have an answer, Cos?
Yeah, well, what you're talking to, look, the reason why we're friends and the reason why we do business together is because you could look at us like, say attorney, contractor, broker. We're kind of like hackers, right? So we basically looked at life and we're like, okay, what are the things that I want for myself? And how do I create a situation where I don't have to compromise, right? So for Joe, his specific personality, he took what he was good at, right? So like, I can't read, so I can't be an attorney, right? So and Wayne, right? So we're all like, all right,
Cook.
so like, let's say being an entrepreneur, right? What does that mean? That you're in charge of hiring the people that are around you. So I used to think, like, when I worked at another company, why the fuck am I putting myself in an environment where I'm not the one who chooses who's around me? That doesn't make any sense. So I was like, fuck that. I want to be the person that decides who's around me because they're around me.
Yep.
Right? So I had to open my own business. And then, you're like, all right, well, my hedge to being a billionaire, I was like, what's most dudes' dream? They want to be a billionaire. It says, all right, well, chances are I'm not going to be a billionaire. So what would be the next best thing? What is a billionaire? What does it represent, right? So it's an idea that represents an emotion that's basically in contrast where I'm like, how do I feel now? And that idea and that emotion is going to be better than the way that I feel now. So I want to travel there. Right?
That was the longest fucking answer, and that's
Right?
why he's a spiritual gangster.
Are we not on the same page
No,
or
we
no?
are on the same page. I get it. I get it. Mark had a little nap, but he kind of gets it. Mark's going to watch this thing over and over and over again and go, well, I think I understand. No, I get what you're saying. I actually agree with you 100%. And
well, let me finish. So the point was,
he's just getting started.
Yeah, that was like the intro. So
why tell us about one deal, one client, one
No. So like, let's say all of us, right? So we're all in the business for the same reason. So we're like, all right, let's say if we were all worth $10 billion each, what would we do? We want to go to a nice restaurant. We want them to know who we are. We want to be able to get a table. If there aren't any available tables, we want to go to a nice club. We want to know what the cool spot is. So it's like a hack. So it's like, all right, if we're not going to be billionaires, we'll live the same billionaire lifestyle by doing the same shit we would have done anyway with $10 billion, except we don't have to wait until some point down the road where we made sacrifices and we're 70 years old. We'll just do the shit now. So all of us, I think, share a passion, and we love restaurants. We love entrepreneurs. We love people that take risks, that have balls. We love hanging out together. We love spending time together, being social.
My liver doesn't love you so much.
But we all have a love for spending time together, hanging out with our friends and dining and drinking and hanging out.
So let me ask a question, Wayne. Yes. You've built really different concepts, not just big projects. You've done little taco shops, and what's one hospitality trend you hope doesn't come back? That's shut down. Something that you thought that's just so
frozen yogurt.
I just don't personally enjoy the really crowded, loud, obnoxious environments.
Like big venues.
I've never enjoyed.
You just fucked yourself. You make money from building.
I just don't personally enjoy it.
Right. Wayne likes space when he dances.
They can be food things too, Joseph. So if it's like a fucking sushi burger or something, tell me something that you've looked at. Because, there was a peak there when things were just flying and people were coming up with some wacky shit, right? What don't you want to see come back?
Well, that's what I don't want to see again. I don't want to see that fucking wacky period where everyone's just trying to come up with the most bizarre fucking thing.
Uni and a cannoli.
Yeah, or like the ramen burger.
Oh, yeah.
Or like all that shit. It's just like, stop.
Just stop. Remember there was
like,
that thing with, they were doing sushi rice and shaping them like a burger bun and then filling it with all this different shit. And avocado, have you guys got over avocado now? Because we're fucking Australian. I got here 3 years ago and they go, oh my God, they've got avocado on toast. That's my terrible American accent. I was looking at the person next to me and I'm like, yeah, good for them. And I'm like, that's amazing. And I'm like, and even a place here opened that's just dedicated to avocados. Yeah. I was like, you guys just discovered fucking the cup of Christ.
What was the thing you had, the avocado sushi or something?
Avocado. Oh yeah, I had a really pretentious restaurant a while back, and it was one of those. It was like one of those fucking movies, LA Story, and they presented a plate, and it was sliced avocado on the plate with lemon oil, and they said sashimi of avocado, and I nearly just grabbed the plate, threw it across the room. Yeah. I got to say thank you to you three guys. We're going to be fucking having a drink together very soon. We're off the clock now, so thank you guys. Thanks Joseph. Thanks Cosmo. Thanks Wayne. Appreciate the time. That's it for this week, peeps. If you're enjoying the show, just go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcast, or whatever podcast player you listen to, and ideally give us a 5-star rating, if we deserve it, of course. It will help other people like you discover us. If you want to find out more on what we get up to, or to suggest someone we should interview, let us know. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at The Raw Hospitality Show. The show is a Fabrica Collective production produced by Mark Fellows and Samantha Webb, music by Jindal.